Hey, welcome along. Kylie's very grumpy because we were just in the middle of hunted and someone was possibly about to get caught and we had to stop it to come here. So we'll have to go and watch the end of that afterwards. But anyway, totally irrelevant to anything that you're watching. Good to see you all. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the sort of vision statement for youth ministry that Queensland Synod has been plopping around with. Today I thought we'd look at the principles that we have sort of said, let's base on these. And I was going to grab from the office a lovely book called On the Way, which came out a couple of decades ago, probably, with Cooker type stuff.
Wow.
But has been dug out and gone, actually, this is all fairly still relevant. Maybe we need to rejig it a little bit and release it again. So that's where primarily these principles come from. So for anyone watching later, if you're an old Cooker person, these might sound familiar. Let me just pick the right ones so you don't get one of my church council documents. Yeah, that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good.
There we go. So, as I said, so the vision stuff we talked about last time, sort of come up with Uniting Church in Queensland has a vision to see young people actively engaged in mission and ministry in every Queensland community, and the vision to see the vision reality. The Uniting Church in Queensland is committed to encouraging and equipping young people from birth into adulthood to grow in discipleship and authentic faith and participate as valued and vital members of intergenerational churches and communities with Jesus at the centre. So how do we do that? Our principles. So principle number 1, young people are people of God. And I'm sure you have both heard me say this is an important one for us to start, because often the church goes, why do we do ministry with children? Well, it's to keep the church alive or to grow up the next generation of leaders or whatever. We do youth ministry primarily because children are people of God. So that should always be our starting base. Well, we see them, they're valued people of God, so we want to help them and encourage them and teach them more about that. Number 2, young people are invited to be lifelong disciples who know and follow Jesus and help others do the same. So we want them in that discipling process, and we want that in that sense to be the lifelong. It's not come in, do Sunday school, you learn all you need to know, and then you stop growing in your faith. It's come in, be part of this, learn about Jesus and help others to do the same. So that part of discipling is then teaching others, things like that. Number 3, young people belong to the body of Christ and called to serve with their own gifts, both as participants and leaders now and in the future. So again, sometimes it's that idea that children are the leaders of the future, which is partly true, but they can also be the leaders of now. So we want to recognize them, that they play a part in the body of Christ. The body of Christ is there to serve the whole church. And so they are there not just to participate, but also to serve. Can't remember whether it was when we were having this meeting, the CYYAF or meeting or somewhere else that I was saying it draws on. Bonhoeffer talks about the body of Christ means that the whole congregation needs to meet together. And if you send out 1 or 2 groups, then you don't have the full body of Christ. So young people are part of that body and play a part now. Number 4, young people grow in Christian faith as they experience and express their belonging, believing, growing, and sharing in family, church, and community. So they live out their faith, they develop their faith, they experience their faith as they live it out in family, in the church, and in the wider community. So that's that we want to be thinking about each of those areas and how we're encouraging our young people to do faith in those spaces. Number 2, 3, 5. It'd be much easier if they numbered these instead of dot pointed. Doesn't make my life easy, but that's all right. Number 5, God's Spirit gives various gifts to the church for ministry with young people and the wider world, and we are called to use them. So recognition that some people have that natural or that God-given gift to work with young people. So we should encourage those that have that gift to be doing that ministry with young people. So we've sort of, the first few look at young people and their place. These last 2 look at the church's response and their place. So for the church, some people are called to that ministry with young people. Number 6, intergenerational mission and ministry are the privilege and responsibility of every member of the Christian faith community, regardless of age, position, or status. So some are deliberately called to that sort of ministry, but the role of intergenerational ministry and working with our young people involves everyone. In fact, everyone in the church, every time there is a baptism, promises to play a part in that role, because we have our congregational vows, and I've never seen anyone stay seated when we all stand to say those. So therefore, every time there's a baptism, they say, we will live out our baptism, helping to nurture this child in their faith. It's not the right words, but you can go and look up the right words and stuff like that. So yeah, it's that sense of, yes, there are people who are called to connect with young people, but we all play a part. We were talking in ministry team today, just looking at what's coming up and noting that Rachel Turner is coming to Brisbane in September. So if you're watching or if you're here, so she's going to be speaking at Chermside one evening and then Sunnybank Baptist the next morning, Tuesday, I'm going to say the 12th of September, talking about faith formation, particularly in the family type stuff. So that's her real thing. But she wrote a book that the Synod Book Club looked at last month. It takes a church to raise a parent. So yes, again, that sense of we all play a part in the growing of our children and of families and stuff like that. So what jumps out to you from those principles? Did anything you go, oh, hadn't thought of that, or oh, I like that, or oh.
I guess that one, number 5, if I recall, maybe it's not, maybe it was 4, just the reminder that everyone has the has a role in being with the children, youth, and everyone else in the church. Is not just left to those who might have at some stage in the church been set aside to do that, but everyone has a broader role to do it. That's probably something that when we do have those commissioning services of the teams of people for various tasks, that it's remember that everyone has this role as a minister. It just depends on how you might go about doing it.
Yes.
And as we look at faith in the family rather than faith just at church, there's obviously more roles that people can do when we look at intergenerational and that. Just coming alongside and talking and chatting and playing games or whatever it might be that we have attempted to make available to people through morning teas and that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was one that stood out. Others obviously are there as well. Just looking at some of them, counting on my fingers, given there's no numbers in front of it. And I guess it was that 4, the one that young people grow in Christian faith as they experience and express their belonging. And therefore it's important to give the opportunity to experience, give the opportunity to express those things, whether it's in the church, in the community, or in the family. And going home and not looking at the Bible, or not looking at faith resources, or not looking at things once you get home, cuts that off in the family life. Treating what could be community or church activities and say, oh no, this is when we're doing the working bees, not when we're talking about God or thinking about where he may be acting in our lives right at this very moment, while we are chopping that tree down and running to the left rather than the right because it's falling near us. Just a chance of all us to experience that and to share that with people, even if the child is 50, 60 or 70 years old.
Yes.
Yeah. needs to be shared there, and not cut off and say this is not the time that we talk about that or think about that or experience that.
Yeah. In all those spaces we are experiencing, how do we bring young people of whatever age into those spaces? Because yes, it might be here's a chance we actually get to have a deep meaning, or the child actually picks up something that, oh, when the tree goes to the left instead of the right, Rod isn't going, oh, but actually acts in a different way that demonstrates Christ.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Or he goes, oh.
Which might be to jump in front of the person to save the person, but
yeah,
that's a bit of heroing, but yes. Could well be a good experience for them.
Yes.
But maybe better just digging the garden or mowing the lawn. Leave the tree cut into those a bit more expertise.
Yes. But you never know what might come out. It's like I've heard people talk about mentoring and stuff like that. You don't necessarily have to have a deliberate mentor, but hey, if that person's on the audio-visual team, then how do the others on that team become those mentors or those people that are walking along in faith that, you actually encourage them to think, okay, yes, you're helping them with the audio, but how do you have those faith conversations along with that? It becomes more intentional. Yeah, absolutely. Kylie, anything jump out at you?
I thought for the first time that if we didn't have youth, then those people who have the gift of being youth leaders or children's ministry workers aren't able to use their gifts, and they'd either have to go somewhere else, which would be frustrating because it wouldn't be where they should be. So I'd never looked at it that way before, that you're actually inhibiting someone from using their God-given gifts.
There's a deep thought. Yep. Yeah. So we need young people to allow those that have that gift to serve there. Yes, absolutely. And
all the older people who have those gifts to serve there.
Yes.
And not to say, oh, we've only got 4 youth, therefore let's not worry about them. We'll pick them up when they're young adults. Those who are able to serve some way in youth and children's ministry, as Kylie said, might well go somewhere else because there's nothing here for me. It's good that they're able to serve somewhere else, but maybe our kids have missed out and they've actually missed out too. So their later years of growing in Christian faith as they experience and express their belonging in a church that looks after the people of God, the young ones.
And like, if I wasn't doing youth ministry because there wasn't any youth or kids, I wouldn't change churches, but I might go on to the morning tea roster, which would be scary. Or I'd go on the building. I'd go on the building one, and that's even worse because I'd be knocking down the trees or pulling out the weeds and flowers and everything.
So they might miss out, or they might find themselves in places that isn't their ministry, which is often the story of churches and part of the story of why come into Southside, so we can allow some of those who were stuck in roles that weren't their gifting to actually free themselves up to do the things that is their gifting. Yeah, absolutely. All those people. And sometimes it's encouraging people to think through, you feel you have a gifting here, your service might not fit in the traditional mold of this, but there are other ways that you can serve. There was, sure I've mentioned Olive a number of times, older lady back in Belmont, would have been in her mid to late, maybe early mid 80s when we were there, and she would just chat with the young people. She'd go up to the drummer up to the youth service in the evening, go, you can play louder if you want, and stuff like that. And she never would, but I would have loved her just to turn up occasionally on Friday evening at youth group and just sit there and be there for people to talk with. And I think some older people go, oh no. Another example of that was Jenny, our church secretary, and her husband and we were doing some training on mentoring, and Jenny's like, oh, Ray and I won't come because, we're a bit old and the kids wouldn't connect with us. It's like, Jenny, do you not every Friday afternoon when the kids are coming for Bible study, chat with them all and connect with them? Don't they chat with you? Doesn't that say to you that they will connect with you? So sometimes it's, working through our perceived image of, oh, I'm too old to do this, to go, hey, there is still a space for me. It might have changed or it might look different to how other people do it, but how do I find my space to do that? Yeah.
And I think it's really important at the moment. Kids need to be listened to.
Mm.
And when you're running a thing, you don't have time to actually sit and chat. But if you have those people who are just there, not doing anything in the program, but are just there to listen, that can mean so much.
Mm. Yeah. But Mark Akinelli. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I can see all those being great principles, and particularly those ones we've been talked about other people being involved. I think one of the blockers or the things that hold us back is, as you mentioned before, about freeing people up to do ministry. It's another thing for me to do.
Mm.
And so I think part of our task and others who are on the journey with us is to identify a way that we can say it's not another task and thing you have to do. How do we make this just part of your natural being here? Yes, you may have to invite this lady along to that Friday evening, but don't make it as another thing I have to do Friday evening. Hey, come and enjoy Friday evening with us. And other things that we're doing, seeing that this role, whether it is a formal or informal mentoring, whether it is a formal discussion or just a catch-up chit-chat, it's not a task, it's not a burden. It's just something that will benefit you as much as anybody else. And can we just be part of that, being more community with people are saying we're isolated, we isolate ourselves, we go home, close the door, put on the TV. Here's an opportunity of not doing that. I know we can get very busy. We can get ourselves saying, got to get to here, got to get to there, got to do this thing, got to get that thing, and prepare for all those. But if we're looking at them as, wow, I'm going to go visit this person to do this activity with them, not a task, but I'm going to share with them in some way, we surely must be feeling a bit better for ourselves, and hopefully that'll benefit those who we are dealing with, and in reverse, us, because they're dealing with us in reverse.
Yeah.
I don't know how we do it, but that's, I think, a task that Southside in particular has to break down, and not say, here's another mission for you, George, go and do this, but here is something you can just participate in. It is just part of our being as a community.
Yeah, for sure. That, a lot of it is just, how am I doing what I do, but maybe having an intentional thing of, okay, how can I include a young person in this? Or, I sit and have morning tea, maybe once a month I can just quickly chat to one of the young people. And the whole intergenerational shows that it's not just beneficial for the young person, but it's actually beneficial for the elderly. That intergeneration, they actually gain a lot from being around younger people. So yes, it's actually, I'm not telling you to do this as another task, but we actually want you to do this because it's going to help you and it's going to bring you life just as much as it will bring life to the young person. So how can we do that better? And yes, how do we promote that as, yes, we don't want more tasks. We're not trying to burden you, but there are just ways that you can live out what you're naturally doing.
And we can even screen hunted while we're doing it.
Absolutely.
But we can even start really simple by, to not make it another task. You're already at church. You're already at morning tea. Push out of your comfort zone and talk to a different generation.
Something I've vaguely heard a little bit about recently, and want to explore a bit more of. Something like faith grandparents or something like that, where a family connects with an older person who's in a nursing home or something like that and commit to visit them. I think it's something like a couple of times a year. And it's actually shown that those connections actually really grow, and they start sharing birthday cards, and they're visiting when they don't have to visit and stuff like that. So yeah, I want to dig a bit more into that and see maybe there's an opportunity for us to connect some of our young families with some of our elderly who aren't able to get to church and build some connections that way. But yes, I've got to do a lot more digging and finding out exactly how that works, but it sounds good.
Ollie would love that.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things we come across, oh, what have I done if I do that? If you said, Kylie, people on Sunday might connect with someone younger. If I come back to you and said, oh, but I come to church and I want to meet up with my friends. But we need to be able to say, well, let's arrange another time for you to meet up with your friends. And maybe 3Fs and Wednesday Club and Sage and other groups will all grow as these become the opportunity they meet with that generation. And Sunday is when they can be intergenerational and call their other 90 or 80-year-old friend across and chat with this 18-year-old who may well confide in them things that the parents miss out on or difficulty they're having. They can say, I had that same problem, or that happened to me too, and share it. But
that'd be awesome.
not take away my social hour or social half hour Sunday morning, but extend it somehow by giving them 3Fs in a much better way, in a different time, and be more inclusive and make Sunday more of a community rather than my little clique over here. And I don't think within the previous communities that they would necessarily be called cliques, but as we start to combine communities, they probably are becoming little cliques. I've got to catch up with this person because I haven't seen them for a whole week or 2 weeks. 2 weeks might be the key here. So if we can find other ways of them having that social aspect, and therefore they're now free to do this ministry that they didn't realize was something they're capable of doing, and will have worthy benefits for both.
Yeah, and it's also that sense of, you know, we're asking you to do that. It might be a 2-minute conversation of, oh, Hannah, how's your week? What have you been doing? You had dance. How did it go? Good. Now I can go over and chat with my older friends. Like, we're not saying, okay, your whole morning tea that week is solely with. It might develop to that, which would be wonderful, but it might be you have a 2-minute conversation once a month with a young person. Surely we can find.
And I think that needs to be very explicit. Like, it needs to be said so they don't stress that I'm not going to have my friendship time. But some won't. They'll go into stress mode and this is out of my control mode and won't actually think through the logic of that. So whether that's not a sermon, but I don't know, let's social experiment with 1 minute to go.
Part of our communication. Anyway, we've got to go and see the end of Hunted. Rod's got to race off to Bible study. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for anyone listening in, and we will catch you again next week.
Bye-bye.